During dinner, Mom compared me to my sister again. She's the one we're proud of. I quietly helped with dishes and said goodbye. The next day, I got a message, Mom's in tears and won't talk to anyone. What did you do? My name is Emma, and I'm 28 years old. I have a sister named Sarah who's 30. For as long as I can remember, Sarah has been the golden child. She's beautiful, charismatic, married to a successful lawyer named David, and just had her second baby. Meanwhile, I'm single, work as a graphic designer, which my parents think is just a hobby, and apparently exists solely to make Sarah look better by comparison. But let me back up and tell you what really happened that night, because the title doesn't even scratch the surface. It was Sunday, October 15th. Linda had invited the whole family over for dinner to celebrate Sarah's baby, little Michael, turning 6 months old. Sarah was there with David and their 2 kids, my dad was there, and so was my Aunt Linda and Uncle Bob. Just your typical family gathering where I'd sit quietly, eat my food, and listen to everyone fawn over Sarah's perfect life. I should mention that I'd just had some pretty big news of my own. After 3 years of freelancing and barely scraping by, I'd finally landed my dream job at a prestigious marketing firm in the city. But here's the thing about my specific role: I work in digital forensics marketing, which means I investigate competitor activities, analyze suspicious online campaigns, and help companies protect themselves from digital fraud. The salary was double what I was making before, and they'd specifically headhunted me after seeing my work on an anti-fraud campaign that went viral. I was over the moon and couldn't wait to share the news with my family. But when I walked into my parents' house that evening, the conversation was already in full swing about Sarah's latest achievement. She'd been elected as the new fundraising coordinator for the PTA board at her daughter's preschool. Linda was practically glowing as she talked about it. "Oh, Emma's here," Linda said when I entered the dining room, barely looking up from the baby she was holding. "Sarah, tell Emma about the PTA thing." I sat down and listened politely as Sarah explained how the other parents had specifically asked her to take on the fundraising coordinator role because she was so organized and had such great ideas. Dad chimed in about how proud he was, and Aunt Linda kept saying things like, "You raised her right, Linda." "Wait, that didn't sound right." "You raised her right, Linda," Aunt Linda was saying to my mother. My mother's name is Linda too, Linda Patricia Martinez, before she married Dad and became Linda Martinez. Everyone called my mother Linda, and my aunt was also Linda, which made family gatherings confusing sometimes. We usually called my aunt Aunt Lynn to distinguish them. Finally, there was a lull in the conversation, and I thought it was my chance. "Actually, I have some news too," I said, trying to keep the excitement in my voice. "I got a job offer from Morrison Digital Solutions. It's this amazing marketing firm that specializes in digital forensics, and they want me to head up their fraud investigation department. The salary is—" "That's nice, honey," Linda said absently, not even looking at me. "Sarah, did you tell everyone about the house hunting? They're looking at places in Westfield now. Can you imagine? That's where all the best families live." My heart sank, but I tried again. "The thing is, this job is really prestigious. They handle accounts for major corporations, and they specifically wanted me because of a Henderson anti-fraud campaign I worked on. You remember, the one that got featured in Marketing Week?" Linda said absently, still focused on Sarah. "Westfield has the best schools in the state. Little Emma is going to get such a good education there." They'd named Sarah's daughter Lily, and her son was Michael. Both beautiful children who deserved better than the chaos that was about to unfold in their family. Dinner continued like this. Every time I tried to share my news, the conversation would somehow circle back to Sarah. When I mentioned that the job came with full benefits and a company car, Linda started talking about how David had just gotten promoted to senior partner at his law firm. When I tried to explain what the Morrison Digital Solutions account meant for my career, Dad launched into a story about Sarah's college achievements. I felt myself getting smaller and smaller as the evening went on. But I kept trying, kept hoping that maybe this time would be different. Maybe this time they'd actually listen. The breaking point came during dessert. Linda had made Sarah's favorite cake, chocolate with raspberry filling, and was serving everyone generous slices. When she got to me, she put down a noticeably smaller piece. "Emma's watching her figure," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Unlike Sarah, who can eat whatever she wants and still look perfect. Must be nice to have good genes." Sarah looked uncomfortable. "Mom, that's not, it's true though," Linda continued, sitting back down. "Look at you two. Sarah's got the husband, the kids, the beautiful house. She's got her life figured out. And Emma." She looked at me with what I can only describe as disappointment. "Well, Emma's still trying to figure out what she wants to be when she grows up." The table went quiet. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and anger. Here I was, 28 years old, about to start the job of my dreams, and my mother was talking about me like I was some kind of failure. "Actually, Linda," I said, my voice shaking slightly, "I do know what I want to be. I'm going to be the head of fraud investigation at one of the most respected digital forensics firms in the city. This is a huge opportunity." Linda waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, Emma? These little jobs come and go. What you need is stability. A husband, children. A real life, like Sarah has. My career is real, I said, louder than I intended. This isn't a little job. This is. Sarah's the one we're proud of, Linda said, cutting me off completely. She's accomplished something meaningful. She's built a family, a life. She's the one who's made something of herself. The words hit me like a physical blow. The entire table was staring at me, and I could feel tears threatening to spill over. Sarah looked mortified, Dad was studying his plate, and Aunt Linda was suddenly very interested in her coffee. I sat there for a moment, processing what had just happened. My mother had just told me, in front of the entire family, that she wasn't proud of me. That my sister was the only one worth being proud of. That my achievements, my dreams, my life, none of it mattered. But instead of breaking down, something inside me shifted. A calm, cold anger settled over me. I was done. You know what, Linda? I said, standing up from the table. You're absolutely right. Sarah is the one you should be proud of. I walked to the kitchen and started clearing plates, moving with deliberate, methodical precision. Sarah followed me, looking concerned. Emma, I'm sorry. You know Mom doesn't mean. It's fine, I said quietly, rinsing dishes in the sink. She's right. You're the successful one. You're the one with a perfect life. That's not true. Your job sounds amazing. You should be excited about it. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. She seemed genuinely upset about what had happened, but I was past the point of caring. Thanks, Sarah. But it doesn't matter. Linda's made her feelings clear. I finished helping with the dishes, said goodbye to everyone with polite hugs and smiles, and drove home to my apartment. The whole way there, I was planning. See, here's what my family doesn't know about me. I'm really, really good at my job. And part of being good at digital marketing is understanding how to find information, how to dig into people's online presence, how to uncover things that maybe weren't meant to be found. I'd never used these skills on my own family before, but that night, I decided it was time. I spent hours going through social media accounts, cross-referencing information, following digital breadcrumbs. What I found was interesting. Let me be clear about something first. I'm not some kind of stalker or cybercriminal. This is literally what I do for a living. Companies hire me to investigate their competitors, to do background checks on potential business partners, to find out what people are saying about their brands online. I have access to professional databases. I know how to use reverse image searches. I understand how to trace digital footprints. These are legitimate skills that I use every day in my work. But I'd never turned these skills on my own family before. I'd always respected their privacy, even when I was curious about things. That night changed everything. I started with David because something about him had always bothered me. He was almost too perfect, too charming, too successful, too quick with compliments for everyone except Sarah when he thought no one was looking. I'd noticed little things over the years. The way he checked his phone constantly during family dinners. How he always volunteered to run errands alone. The expensive gifts he'd give Sarah that seemed designed more to assuage guilt than express love. His Instagram account was public, which was my first clue that he wasn't as careful as he should be. Most lawyers I know are paranoid about their online presence, but David seemed to think his charm made him invisible. He was wrong. The account itself looked innocent enough, photos of Sarah and the kids, shots from fancy restaurants, pictures from their vacation to the Bahamas last year. But it was the activity that told the real story. Every platform tracks your interactions if you know where to look. Facebook likes, Instagram follows, LinkedIn connections, even Venmo transactions if they're public. David had a type, apparently. Young women, usually in their early 20s, almost always aspiring models or influencers. He followed dozens of them across multiple platforms. But it wasn't just following, he was actively engaging. Comments on their photos that were just a little too personal. Likes on posts from 2 a.m. when Sarah would have been asleep. Direct message requests that showed up in the message requests folder if you knew how to check. One name kept appearing more frequently than others, Madison Rodriguez. 23 years old, claiming to be a fitness influencer with about 50,000 followers. Her content was typical, gym selfies, smoothie recipes, motivational quotes over sunset photos. But when I looked closer, something didn't add up. Her apartment, which featured prominently in her home workout posts, was way too nice for someone with her supposed income. I recognized it immediately. It was in Meridian Towers, the new luxury complex downtown. I'd actually worked on the marketing campaign for that building last year. Units there started at $400,000, and the one she was in looked like one of the penthouse models. That's when I started digging deeper into property records. Public information, all of it. Anyone can access county property databases if they know where to look. Madison Rodriguez had indeed purchased Unit 1847 at Meridian Towers in March of last year. Purchase price, $425,000. Down payment, $85,000 in cash. Now, I may not be a financial expert, But I know enough about influencer economics to recognize that someone with 50,000 followers wasn't making anywhere near enough to afford that kind of down payment. The typical influencer with that following might make $1,000 to $2,000 per month if they were really hustling. Where had $85,000 in cash come from? The answer was in the wire transfer records, which took some more digging to access through business databases I have subscriptions to for work. The down payment had come from something called Riverside Property Solutions LLC. I'd never heard of Riverside Property Solutions, but a quick business entity search showed it had been incorporated in Delaware just 6 months before Madison's condo purchase. Delaware incorporation is a red flag. It's where you go when you want to hide the real ownership of a company. The registered agent was a generic corporate service, and the business address was a mail forwarding service. But every company leaves traces. I cross-referenced the incorporation date with David's LinkedIn activity and found something interesting. He posted about expanding our real estate services to better serve our clients right around the same time Riverside Property Solutions was formed. Coincidence? I doubted it. It took me 3 more hours of searching, but I finally found the connection. Riverside Property Solutions was funded by transfers from Hawthorne Industries, which was owned by Robert Chen, a real estate developer who happened to be one of David's biggest clients. The same Robert Chen who'd been facing federal money laundering charges for the past year until David's firm helped him negotiate a plea deal. The picture was becoming clearer. David wasn't just having an affair, he was laundering money for his clients and using some of it to fund his side relationships. The $85,000 down payment was just the beginning. Monthly transfers of $3,000 to $5,000 had been flowing from various shell companies into Madison's accounts for over a year. But Madison wasn't the only one. As I kept digging, I found 2 other young women with similar arrangements. Jessica Walsh, 24, whose art gallery had been funded by another one of David's shell companies. And Amber Chen, no relation to Robert, 22, whose consulting business was receiving regular payments from yet another David-connected entity. My brother-in-law wasn't just cheating, he was running a sophisticated financial operation using his law practice as a front. And my perfect sister had no idea. Or did she? That's when I started looking into Sarah's activities more closely. I'll admit, part of me was hoping I wouldn't find anything. Despite everything, she was still my sister, and some part of me wanted to believe that she was just an innocent victim in all this. I was wrong. Sarah's photography business had seemed legitimate when she first mentioned it. She'd always been good with a camera, and wedding photography could be lucrative. But when I started looking at the business records, the picture got murky fast. Sarah Mitchell Photography LLC had been formed 2 years ago, and according to the state business registration, it was supposed to be a full-service photography company specializing in weddings and events. The website looked professional enough, glossy photos, testimonial quotes, package pricing that seemed reasonable. But when I started reverse searching the photos on her website, I discovered that most of them were stock images purchased from photography websites. The testimonials were generic enough that they could have been written by anyone. And when I looked up some of the venues mentioned in her portfolio, I found something troubling. I called Riverside Country Club, claiming I was a potential client who'd seen Sarah's work on their website. The event coordinator was confused. I'm sorry, who? Sarah Mitchell? I don't think we've had a photographer by that name work here recently. Are you sure you have the right venue? I tried 3 more venues from her portfolio. Same response. That's when I started reaching out to potential clients. I created a fake inquiry through her website, posing as a bride looking for a wedding photographer. Sarah responded quickly with her standard pitch, professional photos, quick turnaround, reasonable prices. She asked for a 50% deposit upfront to secure the date. I didn't book with her, obviously, but the interaction gave me her business email address, which led me to her PayPal and Venmo accounts. Both were linked to her personal social media, which made them easy to find. And once I had those, I could see her transaction history. What I found was a pattern of deposits from brides and grooms, usually in the $1,500 to $3,000 range, followed by nothing. No corresponding expenses for equipment, editing software, or anything else you'd expect from a legitimate photography business. The money just sat in her accounts for a few weeks, then got transferred to her personal checking account and spent on shopping trips, spa visits, and designer handbags. I found social media posts from at least 6 different couples over the past year, all complaining about Sarah Mitchell Photography either not showing up to their wedding or delivering unusable photos months late. In each case, Sarah had claimed equipment failure and offered to redo the shoot, but none of the couples had been able to reach her afterward. It was a classic scam: take deposits from multiple clients, provide minimal or no service, then disappear and claim technical difficulties. The amounts were small enough that most people wouldn't pursue legal action, especially since wedding planning is already so stressful. But Sarah wasn't just scamming brides. I found evidence of her skimming from the PTA fundraising accounts too. As the newly elected treasurer, she had access to all the organization's finances. And while she was careful not to take huge amounts at once, the pattern was clear when you looked at it over time. The PTA would hold a fundraiser, a bake sale, a silent auction, a fun run, and the gross proceeds would be deposited into their account. But then Sarah would write checks for event expenses and administrative costs that didn't quite match up with the actual expenditures. A $500 check for decorations when the receipt showed $150. A $800 charge for catering supplies when the school cafeteria had donated most of the food. The individual amounts were small, $50 here, $200 there, but over the past year, it added up to nearly $4,000. And the timing was suspicious. Every time Sarah posted photos of new designer purchases on social media, there would be corresponding administrative expenses from the PTA account within a few days. I was starting to see a pattern with my family. David was stealing from his clients. Sarah was stealing from her customers and the PTA. And as I was about to discover, Mom was stealing from Dad. My mother has always been the picture of respectability. She volunteers at St. Mark's Episcopal Church, runs the neighborhood book club, and constantly lectures everyone about moral values and making good choices. She's the woman who still sends handwritten thank you notes and remembers everyone's birthday. The idea that she had any kind of secret life seemed impossible. But then I remembered something from Sunday dinner. When David had mentioned his latest promotion, Mom had gotten a strange look on her face, not pride or happiness, but something that looked almost like panic. And when the conversation turned to money, she quickly changed the subject. I started with her social media accounts, but they were exactly what you'd expect: church events, book club meetings, photos of her garden. Nothing suspicious at all. But social media is just the surface. The real information is always buried deeper. I learned Linda's email address years ago when I helped her set up her first smartphone. She'd never changed it, and she'd always been terrible with passwords. It took me 3 tries to guess it. Sarah 2012, the year my sister graduated from college and got married, the accomplishments Linda was most proud of. Her email account was a revelation. Hundreds of messages from various gambling websites, FanDuel, DraftKings, PokerStars, sites I'd never heard of with names like Lucky 777 Casino and Win Big Poker. Welcome bonuses, promotional offers, weekly summaries of her activity. The weekly summaries were the most damning. They showed exactly how much she deposited, how much she'd won or lost, and her current account balance across multiple platforms. In just the past month, she deposited over $3,000 across 6 different gambling sites. Her total losses for the year were approaching $25,000. But where was she getting that kind of money? Dad handled most of their finances, and he was careful with spending. Their joint checking account showed regular deposits from his pension and Social Security, but nothing that would explain Mom's gambling habits. The answer was in her individual account, the one she'd opened years ago for her personal expenses. The deposits were coming from eBay, Facebook Marketplace, and a consignment shop called Treasures and Time. She was selling things. I cross-referenced the sale dates with family gatherings, and suddenly things that had been lost or broken over the past few years made sense. Dad's grandfather's pocket watch had supposedly been misplaced during spring cleaning, sold on eBay for $1,200. Mom's mother's pearl necklace had been damaged when she fell down, listed on Facebook Marketplace for $800. The antique vase from great-grandmother's estate had been broken by the cleaning lady, consigned to Treasures and Time for $650. Even worse, I found evidence that she'd been slowly liquidating their investment accounts. Small withdrawals, usually $1,000 or $2,000 at a time, always with explanations about unexpected expenses or gifts for the grandchildren. Dad probably didn't even notice. He trusted her completely and rarely checked their financial statements closely. The total damage was staggering. Over the past 2 years, Linda had gambled away nearly $35,000 of their retirement savings and sold almost $12,000 worth of family heirlooms. And she was getting deeper in debt every week. But the thing that made me angriest wasn't the money, it was the hypocrisy. This was the woman who'd lectured me about making responsible choices and living within your means. The woman who'd criticized me for buying a new car when my old one died, saying I should have saved more money first. The woman who'd made me feel guilty for every small indulgence while she was literally gambling away their future. I sat back in my chair and looked at the evidence I'd gathered. My brother-in-law was laundering money and cheating on my sister. My sister was running multiple scams and stealing from parents and children. My mother was a gambling addict who'd been lying to her husband for years. And these were the people who'd spent my entire life telling me I wasn't good enough. I thought about all the times I'd been made to feel small, all the achievements that had been dismissed, all the ways I'd been compared unfavorably to Sarah's perfect life. I thought about Sunday dinner and the way Linda had looked at me when she said Sarah was the one they were proud of. For 28 years, I tried to be the good daughter. I'd bitten my tongue when they criticized my choices. I'd smiled and nodded when they praised Sarah for things I'd accomplished first. I quietly cleaned up messes and kept family peace and never, ever rocked the boat. But Sunday night had changed something fundamental in me. When Mom said she wasn't proud of me, something inside me broke. Not just broke, transformed. I realized that I'd been playing by rules that were designed to keep me in second place. I'd been protecting people who didn't protect me. I was done being the good daughter. I was done being quiet. I was done cleaning up other people's messes while they made new ones. It was time for my family to face the consequences of their choices. It was time for them to learn what happens when you take someone for granted for too long. I opened my laptop and started making a list of phone numbers. The IRS fraud hotline. The local police department's financial crimes unit. The school district's ethics office. My father's cell phone. By tomorrow night, my family's carefully constructed facades were going to come crashing down. And for the first time in my life, I was going to be the one they remembered. Not because I cleaned up quietly, but because I refused to be quiet anymore. So now I had a choice. I could sit on this information and go back to being the disappointment daughter. Or I could level the playing field. I chose option 2. The next morning, I started making calls, but I had to be strategic about it. This wasn't some TV show where everything happens in 24 hours. I knew that real investigations take time, especially when you're dealing with financial crimes and fraud. First, I submitted detailed reports to the IRS fraud hotline about David's shell company activities. I provided them with all the documentation I'd found linking the companies to his firm and to his personal finances. I knew this would take months to investigate, but I also knew they'd take these tips seriously. Then I contacted the local police and filed a report about Sarah's photography scam. I'd managed to track down 3 of the couples she'd ripped off, and they were all eager to file complaints once they realized they weren't the only victims. The detective I spoke with said they'd need to investigate before pressing charges, but that it could take several weeks to build a case. Next, I contacted the school district's ethics office about the PTA financial irregularities. I sent them copies of the documents I'd found and highlighted the discrepancies. They said they'd need to conduct an audit, which could take 30 to 60 days. Finally, I called Dad. "Hi, Daddy," I said when he answered. "I need to talk to you about something important. Are you sitting down?" I told him about Linda's gambling problem, about the missing heirlooms, about the credit card debt. I sent him screenshots of her accounts, copies of the sales receipts for his grandfather's watch, bank statements showing the cash withdrawals. Dad was quiet for a long time after I finished talking. Finally, he said, "How long have you known about this?" "I just found out last night," I said. "I thought you should know." "Does your mother know that you know?" "Not yet." Dad sighed heavily. "Thank you for telling me, Emma. I need to figure out how to handle this." After I hung up, I sat back in my chair and felt something I hadn't felt in years: satisfaction. Not happiness, exactly, but a sense that things were finally balanced. The next few weeks were quiet. Too quiet. I went to work, focused on my new job, and waited. Then, about 3 weeks later, I got a text from Sarah. "Linda's in tears and won't talk to anyone." "What did you do?" I stared at the message for a long time before responding. I didn't do anything. Sometimes the truth just comes out. Sarah called me immediately. "Emma, what is that supposed to mean?" "What truth?" "Linda won't leave her room, Dad's been sleeping in the guest bedroom, and no one will tell me what's going on." "Maybe you should ask them," I said calmly. I tried. "Mom just cries and Dad says it's family business and clams up." "Did you two have a fight after dinner Sunday?" "We didn't fight, Sarah. We never fight. I'm the good daughter, remember? I just clean up quietly and leave." There was a pause. "Emma, you sound different. What's going on?" "Nothing's going on. I'm just done pretending everything is fine when it's not." "What do you mean?" I almost told her then. Almost laid it all out: her husband's affairs, her fraudulent business practices, Mom's gambling problem. But I decided to let her figure it out herself. "Sarah, has David been working late a lot recently?" Another pause, longer this time. "Why would you ask that?" "Just curious. And how's the photography business going? Getting a lot of repeat customers?" "Emma, what are you getting at?" "Nothing. I'm just making conversation. Isn't that what families do?" She hung up on me. The next day, I got a call from Dad. "Emma, can you come over? We need to talk." When I arrived at my parents' house, the atmosphere was completely different from 3 weeks ago. Linda was sitting in the living room, her eyes red and puffy, clutching a tissue. Dad looked exhausted. Sarah was there too, sitting stiffly on the couch next to her husband, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Sit down, Emma," Dad said. I sat in the chair across from them, the same chair where I used to sit as a child when I was in trouble. But this time, I wasn't the one in trouble. "Your mother has something she wants to say to you," Dad continued. Linda looked up at me with watery eyes. "Emma, I owe you an apology. What I said 3 weeks ago was wrong. It was cruel and unfair, and I'm sorry." I waited. This felt like the beginning of something, not the end. "But more than that," Linda continued, her voice shaking, "I need to thank you. For making your father aware of my problem." Sarah looked confused. "What problem?" Linda broke down crying then, and Dad had to explain about the gambling, the stolen heirlooms, the debt. Sarah's face went through a series of expressions: confusion, shock, anger, and finally something that looked like understanding. "So this is what you meant," she said, looking at me. "About the truth coming out." I didn't respond. David shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Look, this is a family matter. Maybe I should go." "Actually," I said, speaking for the first time since I'd sat down, "you should stay. Because there's something else we need to discuss." The room went very quiet. "Emma," Dad said warningly. "No, Dad. We're being honest now, right? We're putting everything on the table?" I looked directly at David. "How long have you been seeing Madison?" Sarah's head snapped toward her husband. "Who's Madison?" David's face had gone completely white. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Madison Rodriguez. 23 years old. Lives in that new condo complex downtown. The one you helped her buy with your client's money." "Emma." Sarah stood up abruptly. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying your husband has been having an affair and laundering money through his law firm to pay for it. And that's just the beginning." The next 20 minutes were chaos. David tried to deny everything, but I had screenshots, bank records, property deeds. Sarah was screaming, Mom was crying harder, Dad was trying to maintain order. Finally, David stormed out, shouting something about lawyers and lawsuits. Sarah collapsed back onto the couch, staring at me like she'd never seen me before. "Why?" she whispered. "Why would you do this?" I stood up, smoothed down my skirt, and looked around the room at my broken family. "You want to know why?" "Because 3 weeks ago, Linda looked me in the eye and told me that you were the only one she was proud of. That my life, my career, my achievements, none of it mattered. That I was nothing compared to you." I walked toward the door, then turned back. "So I decided to show everyone what you're really proud of. A daughter who steals from school fundraisers. A son-in-law who cheats on his wife and launders money. A mother who lies and gambles away the family's savings." "Emma, please," Linda said through her tears. "I was wrong. I was so wrong. I am proud of you. Your new job, your talent, everything you've accomplished. It's too late for that, Linda. You can't take back what you said. You can't take back 28 years of making me feel like I was never good enough." I opened the front door and paused. "For what it's worth, I really am sorry it came to this. I wanted to be the good daughter. I wanted to make you proud. But since that was never going to happen anyway, I figured I might as well be honest." I walked out and closed the door behind me. That was about 6 weeks ago. Since then, the investigations I started have slowly been moving forward. David is currently under federal investigation. These things take time, but his law license has been suspended pending the outcome. The school district completed their audit and found evidence of the PTA embezzlement. Sarah is facing charges, but her lawyer thinks she'll get community service and restitution since it was her first offense, and she's agreed to pay everyone back. Linda and Dad are in counseling, trying to figure out if their marriage can survive her deception. And me? I started my new job at Morrison Digital Solutions 6 weeks ago. It's everything I hoped it would be and more is everything I hoped it would be and more. My colleagues respect my work, my boss values my input, and for the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Sarah has texted me a few times, apologizing for that dinner and begging me to help fix the family. But I'm done being the one who fixes things. I'm done being the good daughter who quietly cleans up everyone else's messes. Some people might say I went too far. That I destroyed my family over one hurtful comment. But it wasn't just one comment, it was a lifetime of being overlooked, dismissed, and made to feel inadequate. The truth is, I didn't destroy my family. I just stopped protecting them from the consequences of their own actions. And honestly, I sleep better at night now than I have in years. Sometimes the only way to win is to stop playing by rules that were designed for you to lose. Sometimes the only way to get respect is to demand it. And sometimes the only way to be proud of yourself is to stop waiting for other people's approval. I'm still the same Emma I've always been. I'm just not hiding it anymore. Update: it's been 4 months since I posted this, and I've gotten so many messages asking for an update that I felt like I should share what's been happening. David ended up taking a plea deal after a 6-month investigation. He's facing 2 years in federal prison and has to pay back over $180,000 in restitution. Sarah filed for divorce and moved back in with our parents with the kids. She ended up with probation and 200 hours of community service for the PTA embezzlement, plus she had to pay back the school district and all her photography victims. Linda and Dad are still in counseling, but they seem to be working things out. Linda joined Gamblers Anonymous and has been clean for 4 months now. Dad took over all the household finances completely and they've started rebuilding their savings. As for me and my family relationships, it's complicated. Sarah and I have talked several times. She's still angry about how I handled everything, but she also admits that she needed to know the truth about David. She said she's grateful I told her, even though she hates the way I did it. Linda has tried to apologize many more times, and I can see she's genuinely remorseful. But I'm not ready to just go back to the way things were. We're taking it very slowly. She respects my boundaries now in a way she never did before. The only person who's really talked to me normally through all this is Dad. He called me last month and said, "Emma, what you did was harsh, but you were right about everything that mattered. And I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself." It was the first time he'd ever said he was proud of me. Work is going amazingly. I got promoted to Senior Investigation Director last month, and my boss said I'm the most thorough investigator they've ever hired. I've also started dating someone, a guy named James who works in our legal department. He's kind, funny, and when I told him the whole story about my family, he said it sounded like I'd done what needed to be done. I know some people will always think I went too far, that I should have handled it differently. But I don't regret it. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living authentically, and that's worth more than maintaining a fake sense of family harmony. Sometimes you have to burn everything down to build something better. And sometimes, the people who claim to love you need to learn that love requires respect, not just blood relation. I'm proud of who I am now. And I don't need anyone else's permission to feel that way.